I was rambling about some shit that genuinely didn't matter. Uh, or at least I was going way off topic, so there's another take. And I honestly didn't have a plan. I just wanted to shoot the camera and see what I could get. Um, but one topic that I have in my mind for a while is self-control. And I figured that I would give my 2 cents on it. So, where did this come from? Just general talks about um, substances and people that indulge in it, people that abuse them, and in turn are abusing themselves. Now, this might go into a brief rant on the laws regarding drugs because some may or may not know that the law for cigarettes used to be 18. You used to be 18 years old so you can buy cigarettes, and 21 for alcohol. The same still applies to alcohol right now, but cigarettes have been bumped up to 21. Which brings forth this idea that there's a way to minimize the amount of people that are using substances when I don't think that's stopping anytime soon, especially given what's been happening recently. I mean, even back when I was in high school, I would have just the slightest whiff of weed coming through the bathroom, and you know how strong that fucking thing is. Even when I'm working drive-through at night in my job, I can smell them just immediately feeling the high. So I don't think it's helping at all. Granted, those are adults, and there are certain situations where that applies to kids, but even still, I don't think the epidemic of drugs is gonna happen anytime soon. Dave Chappelle put it the best. These people need genuine help because there's usually an underlying reason behind it. But what happens if you abuse this kind of stuff? Case in point, there's something I can't explicitly say because at the time of this, I am 20 years old. And if you've heard fairly recently, you'll know what I'm getting into. But even still, I want to try to talk about it. So I'll try to be as close to plausible deniability as I can. Case in point, I was in a party, I think it was last week or the week before, where there was a certain drink. You can probably guess what it is. It was lemon flavored, pretty good. About 15 out of 100, I guess. And I drink it from time to time. I would drink it within the hour, just downing that stuff down. It was just one, right? And here's one thing that I wanted to get into. Self-control. Because some people know when they're going too far, and some people don't. Case in point, I did not have enough to the point that I would have certain things happen in my body. I wouldn't get to the point where I'd be too influenced by that instead of me influencing myself into doing this. And some other ones that were within there did. And you have to wonder if it's just to show off or if it's just because you can. Because self-control can be lost if you're trying to look cool in front of somebody else. And this is a major problem that's gone on ever since high school, I believe. Because some people just want to do it because they'll get some brownie points from other people. In my opinion, that's one of the lowest things that anyone can ever do, especially on the internet. You've seen these cases. I've brought this one up before about the one that was in front of a train, and the train stopped right on his back and he was still smoking. At least he got arrested because there's some sort of punishment there. And then there's some other shit where somebody was pulling a prank and they got shot. There have been several instances of this, all for the sake of views on YouTube. One person died, which is really tragic, even though it can't be denied that it was their fault. They were rushing somebody with a fucking knife. So it's only natural that somebody would try to act in self-defense. And then the other case, I think the guy was just being annoying, and that's more of a lukewarm case because the person that shot was they had a certain history. Let's just say that they had a history, and you'd have to wonder, given that context, they were if they were in the right in any way. Because if there's a certain saying that I like, it's fuck around and find out. I've told it to my dad. He 100% agrees. And I don't see why anybody else wouldn't. Which brings to this other thing where we have so little time on this planet to deal with assholes. It's just a fact. So, if you can't respect that, just don't come crying when you get an immediate stabbing feeling in the stomach. Because some people will never learn and until something happens to them. And even then, they might have a chance to just be stubborn and pull up with it. Because that one guy that got shot and survived, he said he's still gonna do it. He's learned nothing from any of the shit that he's pulled. And who knows if they will. But still, stubbornness. Stubbornness for social attention. Again, it's one of the lowest things that you can do. And you have to wonder if you're doing things for yourself or if you're doing it for everybody else. There are some things that can genuinely be done for other people. For example, doing favors, trying to help them out with something, or giving them advice. That's one of the few ways where doing something for someone is genuinely appreciated. Of course, it's something that has happened in my life frequently, and people have done things for me, and I am very grateful for that. And it's only fair that I try to reciprocate where I can. And I think you should too, if you have people that you genuinely care about and people that have never done you wrong. Because that's one of the hardest things that you can do, is just show appreciation, especially with the implications that come with that. Like, you can probably wonder the amount of people that think I was gay because I was just helping somebody out and I just happened to be really close to them, like physically, not emotionally or anything. But that, again, let's circle back to abusing stuff, because it has happened. Back with the example of the party, that is something that I haven't abused, but I've been abused myself. It's something that I'll have to discuss in November, because that's a certain month that actually connects with me, and I try to draw it from time to time. And that leads to the following: coping mechanisms, because there's got to be a way to pull through and just try to disconnect yourself from that. There are some ways. Drawing. That's the thing that I brought up fairly recently. I haven't been drawing as much recently because it's just something I find very time consuming. Of course, I took my time with those things, but I'm in a sort of art block. When am I not? I might do it again fairly soon, but just don't know exactly when. But I think drawing how you feel, and it allows you to exaggerate certain things that will give people a bigger picture, which is interesting because I remember hearing that people, or kids rather, they draw certain things, or they draw how they feel as a form of indirect communication, which I find really interesting. And I can't help but wonder if I'm a kid in that sense, where I draw how I feel, and I've started to become less direct about it, because some of you might know that in the original profile that I actually had these like paragraph long descriptions of what this was supposed to represent. In hindsight, that's cringy as hell, and I'll refrain from doing that because it's just bringing it up to your face. But also, ambiguity is something that assists with art, so I'm gonna refrain from doing that from now on. So that's one coping mechanism. Another one, which I found a little strange, but I've actually seen in person, was with sesame seeds in regards to smoking, because you'll find some people smoking cigarettes or some other stuff, and they resort to sesame seeds. Even in, I think it was the book Holes, with Stanley Yelnats, if anybody remembers that. I think there's a character in there that was eating sesame seeds, uh, after they quit smoking. I don't think it was the warden, it was somebody else, but even so, I think just having a certain snack would be helpful. Even with Ronald Reagan back in the day, because apparently he would have jelly beans nearby in order to quit smoking, which I found interesting. So I guess having something flavored yet doesn't have nicotine could assist. And I guess the most obvious one, hobbies. Like you can probably tell, I play certain games at times. And some games that have certain themes can genuinely assist with helping you with that. You know, there's games like The Last of Us, games like Dark Souls. Dark Souls may be more indirect with its themes, but they're there. And even with certain characters, you know, don't you dare go hollow. That's one of the most simple. It was one of the shortest lines, but it's one of the most effective ones too for emotion, or at least I think so. It's just the underlying message of, hey, just keep going, because some people just need to hear that sometimes, that they need to keep going, even if they don't have that many people by their side. They just have to have a certain push. But still, it pains me that some people like to abuse substances or just indulge in certain, not hobbies, but practices. You know, being a slouch all day, I was doing that fairly recently. Let's say a few months ago. I just felt lazy. I didn't want to do much. It was after a certain thing that's happened, and I just didn't want to do anything. And I paid for it up the ass because I did not do that well during the last month of college. Yeah, but still, new beginnings. So I am doing certain classes. I'm not attending one of them right now, actually, but it was a lecture one. You can't really blame me for that. And I'd say I'm doing fine. I'm just rolling with it, seeing what I can do. And that's that. So, last form of coping, get creative. Yes, this goes back to art, but again, could be anything. Could be writing wise, could be story wise. Like, I quit D&D fairly because of the shit that's happened, and I still have ideas for one shots. I might actually go forward and start writing them, because if you don't write anything, you'll forget about it completely, and you're gonna be like, what could have been? But yeah, I'm gonna think of some one shots that I can just cook up. I might not be able to host them, but I still want people to try them out and let me know how they did, as rare as that might be, and we'll just go from there. Which reminds me, there was this one shot that I made, but I never finished. So I might have that doc publicly, with the links on Instagram, because I think those are the best areas to do that. And I guess this will transition to a catching up section. That's pretty mandatory with this kind of stuff. I bought 2 books. None of them are narrative, so they don't have anything with that. But I think they'll still be kind of useful. At least one of them is. Some of you on Instagram might know. The U.S. Army Manual on First Aid. I think everybody should have this, or at least have somebody with it, because it covers the basics and it covers stuff that is more perilous. You know, relatively simple things like giving CPR or checking for bleeding, from that stuff down to head concussions, snake bites, and burns. Of course, I would know a thing or two about burns, but I think it would be very nice for people to have this, because it also shows you how to check for certain things such as shock, which is an unfortunately high killer for people in the US, and I think people should at least have an idea of what to look out for. That, and I have this one that is admittedly less practical, Evasion and Escape. Really, I just found it more for entertainment value, in the sense that there are ways that US Army people would have to deal with isolation and how to get to home base. I genuinely think that could make for a great story. It's probably been done before. I just need to keep searching, but still, I don't know if anybody could tell, but if you've seen my Amazon purchases, you'll know exactly why I did this. It might have been influenced from The Last of Us. Other stuff, like just for the sake of it, Alien. I'm almost done with the entire series. I just need to finish Covenant, or watch Covenant, because I haven't started that one. That said, my dad has been catching me watch these in the living room, and we watched. He's apparently seen the first one, which made me a little surprised until I realized when he was born. And Alien 4, it's the one that I'm most conflicted by. It's genuinely the weakest one in the series. But Prometheus was decent, I think, and I can only hope Covenant is decent, if not good, because Romulus is coming out, and I don't know how to feel about that. And naturally, speaking of The Last of Us, I got the entire series on Blu-ray. I'm actually fairly proud of having this. As you might expect, I also have part 1 over there. So I have the remastered, I have part 1, and I have part 2. No Return is actually really good, by the way. So if you have a PS5 and you've wondered about getting the game, I say get it. But try to find it in a lower price, because Walmart will likely have it at a lower price. I managed to get The Last of Us Part 2 for like 16 or 17 bucks. And then it was a $10 upgrade for the PS5 version, which I can't say is completely worth it because there's still loading screens there. Same thing for part 1. I guess they wanted to keep the continuity of having spores or moths showing up. But even still, I think it's fine. And I've also changed my opinion about the game. I have an entire script that's in the works right now for how I feel. It's a very long project, but I think it's gonna work. And I'll say that I was kind of wrong about that game. I'm not gonna lie, because there are certain themes that hit hard, especially if you go through something similar to the characters. And if you try to deconstruct it piece by piece, then you'll have a greater appreciation for what that was trying to say. And of course, No Return is very great. I haven't seen the documentary yet. I want to once I finish up other stuff for school, but we'll see how that goes. And finally, just as a last touch-up, Dark Souls 3. If you've played Elden Ring and still need more Soulsborne, get Dark Souls 3. Especially if you can get the Fire Fates edition, because that includes all the DLC and will likely have a bit more polish there. Some of the bosses were kind of easy to deal with, but that game really incentivizes aggressive play. And I haven't seen combat as aggressive since I've played Bloodborne, because I've tried Dark Souls 1. That game was pretty good, even though understandably the pacing was a bit low. Then I tried Demon Souls, which was more of a laid-back sort of Souls game, which is understandable because the amount of hits that you can tank, especially with the Night Shield at the start, it's pretty laid back, and you can really see how that was the blueprint for the rest of the FromSoft games. But I also recommend Dark Souls 3 because you see a lot of aspects that came for Elden Ring. For example, allocating flasks. Instead of Crimson Tears and Cerulean Tears, you have regular Estus and you have Ashen Estus for health and mana respectively. And it's just interesting to see the way that everything was incorporated from one game to the next. And then I have Dark Souls 2. That's just for the sake of the collection. I tried it like 4 hours, I think, into that game, and I don't like it. If there was a remake of some kind with DLC, I would consider getting it, because they just have to do away with adaptability and actually refining the game to what Bloodborne was in order to make it great. But it's just a mess. And it's one of the few times that I've actually considered doing a magic build, because My god, is that game so fucking slow. But I think that's about it. It's another rant. Thank you for dealing with 20 minutes of my bullshit again, because I just can't stop rambling sometimes. Like, I barely remember what the topic of this video was gonna be. So, yeah. Y'all take care of yourselves. And hopefully spring break is just around the corner.